Welcome, one and all, to episode number 3 of PACIFIC414 episode reviews. I'm your host, Mike, and today I'm going to be reviewing The Mandalorian Chapter 3, Episode 3, The Sin. Now, this episode picks up where the child left off, and our Mandalorian friend, along with the child, are headed back to Navarro so they can deliver the child to the client. And while they're making their descent to the planet, our Mandalorian friend gets a hail from Greef Karga saying that he better hurry and deliver the child to the client. He's antsy about it. He doesn't know if he wants to eat it or if he wants to hang it on his wall. In the meantime, the little child, little baby Yoda, has crawled out of his carriage and crawled toward one of the control levers and decided to unscrew one of the knobs and play with it as a toy. And our Mandalorian friend says to the child, and this is before he's hailed by Greef Karga, it's not a toy. So anyways, the Razor Crest lands onto the surface. Our Mandalorian friend goes to where the client's located, and the security system comes out. He shows his credentials. 3 stormtroopers come up to the door, and our Mandalorian friend is basically escorted by the stormtroopers to the client. Our Mandalorian friend says to one of the stormtroopers, who abruptly rough handles the carriage, take it easy with that, and is told by the stormtrooper no. And so the client finally receives the child and says how important it is, and the doctor who is with the client examines the child, and then the doctor and the child go into another room, and infant baby Yoda, the child, look at the Mandalorian, and those sad big little eyes as if to say, what are you doing? Why did you bring me here? And of course, our Mandalorian friend has questions, and the client tells the Mandalorian, I didn't think this was the way of the guild. Basically, he tells him, take your reward and get out of here. And which, after a while, our Mandalorian friend does. He goes to where the other Mandalorians are hiding underground in the Covenant, and the other Mandalorians are looking at him in jealousy because they see his reward, and also some of them are resentful because he is working for former Imperials. And he's even confronted by one of the Mandalorians. They get into a fight. The leader of the Mandalorians underground says, after our Mandalorian friend is called a coward, if he was such a coward, why would he even be using the code of the Mandalorian, which is you don't remove your helmet, you don't reveal yourself unless you need to, and you follow the code explicitly. So, after some reasoning, she is shown his reward. She takes the Vespa and crafts him a new suit of armor and whistling bird, small little rocket missiles, artillery weapons for him to use. And after all is said and done, he goes back to the surface and he meets up with Greef Karga, and he wants another job. And Greef Karga says, "Relax, Mando, take it easy, you've earned it." And the Mandalorian says, "I want another job." So after going through a couple different bounties that are available, the Mandalorian selects one, and before he leaves his meeting with Greef Karga, he does ask what's going to happen to the child, infant baby Yoda. And Greef Karga says, "Don't concern yourself with that. By the time you get to your next destination, you'll have forgotten all about it." So our Mandalorian friend leaves, he gets back to his ship, starts powering it back up, and then he gets to the lever with the missing knob, and his conscience gets to him. So he decides that he's going to power down his ship, and he's going to basically go on a reconnaissance mission. He goes back to where the client's hideout is, first on a roof across the street, listens in on what's going on, and then he makes his plan of attack by going to the client's hideout, taking out the main security system, alerting the stormtroopers. He takes them out and even burns one alive with his torch, which I never expected to see on a Disney series. I mean, after all, this is on Disney Plus, but oh well. I guess to get that more adult crowd, they decided, let's do this. I mean, it is rated TV-14, so there are certain things they can and cannot get away with. Hey, but I have no problem about it. I mean, it's just supposed to show you, the lengths that the Mandalorian's willing to go to rescue the child. Well, after taking out those first few stormtroopers, our Mandalorian friend is eventually surrounded by about 5 stormtroopers, and that's when he uses the whistling birds. He goes into the room where the doctor is with the child, little baby Yoda, who is asleep on a diagnostic bed, and there's a probe droid hovering right above him, and he takes out the probe droid, and the doctor pleads for his life, says if it wasn't for me, the baby wouldn't be here. So our Mandalorian friend rescues the child, little baby Yoda, starts heading back toward the ship when Greef Karga and the other bounty hunters are surrounding him. And while they're being surrounded, Greef Karga gives him, a plea deal and says, give us a child and we'll let you live. And our Mandalorian friend, as expected, doesn't take the deal. And, there's a shootout. Our Mandalorian friend uses his rifle and vaporizes a couple of bounty hunters and uses his flamethrower to fend off a few more, his blaster. Meanwhile, trying to protect the infant, the child, baby Yoda. And then all of a sudden the cavalry arrives. Those Mandalorians who are in the Covenant, come out, from below, and they come in on their jetpacks. They're firing their rifles, Gatling guns, all over the place, and they're buying our Mandalorian time to get out. and our Mandalorian friend asks the Mandalorian who he had a scuffle with earlier in the episode, you're gonna have to relocate. I shouldn't say ask. He says, you're gonna have to relocate the Covenant. And the Mandalorian he had a fight with earlier says, this is the way. And then our Mandalorian friend heads back to the Razor Crest, takes off, and before he leaves the planet, he's escorted by one of the Mandalorians who are flying on their jetpack and says, I gotta get me one of those. And last we see is our Mandalorian friend leaving the planet's atmosphere and jumping into hyperspace. So overall, I enjoyed this episode. I enjoyed everyone's performance in this episode. I thought the story was a good story to tell about first, he of course did his job as a bounty hunter, but then, he was thinking about the consequences of his actions, and his conscience got to him, and he ultimately decided to go against everything he knew as far as being a bounty hunter, and went back and rescued the child. So overall, again, I enjoyed it. I like that particular plot twist, and I know that other things are going to happen in the future, and as far as I'm concerned, I look forward to rewatching episodes 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And speaking of episode 4, Sanctuary, that will be my next review. I hope everyone has enjoyed this, and I will see you later. Take care.